Hi, I'm Connor Flanagan, the Director of Education here at the Southampton History Museum, and today my coworker, Mary Cummings, is going to be giving her talk on the Cryder Triplets, uh, three women highlighted in our Gilded Age exhibit. Um, she's been giving this lecture series since March, April, one of those, I forget off the top of my head right now, but once a month, diving into all the women highlighted in our exhibit. If you have not had a chance to see the exhibit in person yet, we are now open. So you can just give us a call at 631-283-2494, and you can book a tour. But without further ado, I will turn things over to Mary, and she can get started with her talk. Enjoy, everybody.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining me for this latest installment of my series on the Gilded Age women. This time I have not one, but three subjects, the famous Cryder Triplets, Edith, Elsie, and Ethel. Duncan Crider, a well-heeled tea importer and father of the celebrated Cryder Triplets, Edith, Elsie, and Ethel, once acknowledged that his fondest hope for his daughters was that each would marry a man who did not have to go to business every day. A man of great charm and wit, Duncan Crider had been raised in London and was comfortable and popular wherever he went. The Criders were among the earliest members of Southampton's resort colony, summering in Sandrift, a shingled cottage built on the dunes in 1885 and now long gone, but we still have Cryder Lane to remind us of the Cryder family. There, as on the streets of New York City, where they spend the rest of the year, the three adorable little girls, born in 1882, turn heads wherever they go, dressed identically and impossible to tell apart. Impressed on the girls from the start is the importance of their mother, Elizabeth Ogden Crider's pedigree. Among her illustrious Ogden ancestors was John Ogden, who had arrived in Southampton with the settlement's second minister in 1649. For nearly 2 decades, Ogden held prominent positions in the town's administration while acquiring much real estate, including in Shinnecock Hills. Historians have speculated on his reasons for leaving Southampton in 1670, but they don't usually include his family's account, which has him selling and departing because he disapproved of the way the Indians were being treated there. Oh, shoot. He resettled in New Jersey, where he became the leader of Elizabethtown, and later he became governor. Unfortunately, the girls' early childhood idyll of summers on the shore and winters in the glittering city comes to an abrupt end when they are 8 years old. In 1891, their uncle, William Wetmore Cryder, besmirches the family name by helping himself to $39,000 from the Manhattan Square Bank, where he's president and Duncan serves on the board. William, a pillar of the financial community, has also been a pillar of support for Duncan's family, which is dependent on him to supplement the sometimes meager tea business profits. Making matters worse for everybody, William reneges on his debts and deserts his wife. To escape the family scandal, Duncan Crider sweeps his family off to Paris, a move that has some very pleasant consequences for Edith, Elsie, and Ethel. Apparently, the money never really dies up completely, but when it is reduced to a trickle, the Criders put on a good front in Europe. The triplets live what Elsie later describes as a life of leisure. Educated by their governess, they learn French and invent a secret language. They tour Europe and, guided by their father, acquire the continental polish that will attract the kind of men who will never be tied to a desk. By visiting British and continental cities and spas in the off-season, they save money but establish social ties that will endure. They meet Consuelo Vanderbilt, who becomes Edith's best friend in 1897. And in 1897, they're honored by an invitation to visit the Empress Eugenie, widow of the last emperor of France, their crowning achievement. Elsie, always the most audacious, is her father's favorite. Her sisters predict that she will be the most successful in carrying out her father's ambitions for his daughters, though by the time it is felt safe to return home, all three have acquired impeccably aristocratic manners and social ease. They are celebrities, pointed out on the street when they pass by. On their return in 1899, the triplets take Manhattan by storm. They settle in at their Greenwich Village home, filling it with souvenirs of their travels. At their debut in 1900, they are extravagantly dressed and the stars of the evening, though they are awarded faint praise in town topics. The widely read social sheet describes the triplets as, quote, pleasant, well-mannered, but not really pretty girls, tall and slight in figure, and graceful in movement. Pretty or not, they appear on magazine covers, inspire rhapsodic prose in the society columns, and wealthy suitors flock to their door. The first to be married, and curiously labeled the oldest of the triplets, is Edith, whose groom, Frederick Lothrop Ames Jr., is described as a financier and socialite, whose Ames ancestors arrived in Plymouth, Massachusetts in 1635. Ameses succeed in numerous ways over the years, but the enterprise that accounts for Frederick's huge fortune is the company founded by his grandfather, which ultimately manufactures 3/5 of the shovels in the world. Frederick's father, heir to the shovel fortune, is said to be the richest man in Massachusetts. And Edith's husband, an heir at 17 after his father's premature death, is well schooled in the art of high living and lavish spending by the time he and Edith are married. The wedding takes place in May 1904 with Ethel and Elsie as bridesmaids. That same year, Ames commissions architects to design a Georgian Revival mansion for him and for his bride on his vast country estate near Boston. Stone Hill House, as they call it, is completed in 1905. It's now part of Stonehill College. In 1916, Frederick and Edith acquire another mansion, one that will put them in position to enter Newport society. They call their new dwelling on Bellevue Avenue Ames Villa, and proceed to completely remodel it, originally a stick-style cottage known as New Lodge. It's a mansion in the classical revival style when the transformation is complete. 5 months later, it is Elsie at the altar, and it's another magnificent match. Unaware of the tenuous position the Cryder family has held at times in society and of their financial stresses, the society press calls the union a coup for William Woodward, though he's certainly a catch himself, with old money, blue blood, and a future as president of the Hanover National Bank. The wedding in October 1904 is another triumph for Duncan Crider, who continues to be described in the press as very wealthy and highly connected. Then, in December 1908, complete victory is his when Ethel, last of the triplets to marry, is courted and won by Cecil Higgins, a wealthy former secretary of the British Embassy in Washington. He sweeps Ethel off to England and a life in London society. With their exits to Boston and London, respectively, Edith and Ethel move out of the New York spotlight, leaving Elsie to bask in its glow. Edith is widowed when Frederick Ames dies unexpectedly in 1921 at the age of 45. She keeps Ames' villa in Newport, but wastes no time in selling Stone Hill House, having little interest in the huge agricultural estate and the Guernsey cattle that were her husband's pride. Stodgy Boston society and cows, even prize-winning cattle, can't compete with the heady pleasures of Gilded Age Newport. In 1931, when the widowed Edith marries Roger Cutler, whom the press considers, quote, a good-humored playboy, close quotes, handsome, athletic, and 7 years her junior, eyebrows are raised. But Edith and her new husband spend their summers in Ames Villa and hold a secure place in Newport elite circles. The first to be married, Edith is the first to die in 1954 at the age of 72. Ethel's death follows 10 years later. She too has remarried in 1921. Her second husband, Arthur Fowler, is a widower whose first wife had been very wealthy. At his death, he bequeaths to Ethel his first wife's fortune, which Ethel uses to settle in Georgetown, becoming a celebrated Washington hostess, second only to her close friend, Alice Roosevelt Longworth. Three who lived to get married was the way one writer viewed the triplets in their days as celebrated young beauties. Edith and Ethel each married twice, while Elsie has the longest marriage and the longest, but far from the happiest, life. The early years of her marriage are the stuff of dreams. Headed for a top spot in the city's financial community, William Woodward Sr. has another more dashing side. After Harvard undergraduate and law degrees, he serves as secretary to the United States ambassador to Britain and hobnobs with King Edward II and his circle, including at the racetrack. Back home, he inherits the historic Bel Air mansion and Bel Air Stud, the thoroughbred horse racing stable and breeding farm in Maryland that would produce some of the greatest thoroughbred race horses in the US under his direction. During his courtship of Elsie, there had been visits to the Saratoga race course, and after their marriage, the young Woodwards are favorites in the racing community, as well as in New York City society, where they entertained lavishly at 9 East 86th Street. Alas, scandal seems to stalk Elsie. Earlier, the Cryder family disgrace in 1891 had actually had rather pleasant consequences for the triplets, sending them off to Paris. The Woodward scandals will be much more damaging. Elsie's only son, William, known as Billy Woodward Jr., seems at first to be destined for a charmed life. Educated at Buckley, Groton, and Harvard, Billy has everything going for him. As a young man, he's listed as one of America's most eligible bachelors. Then, Anne Crowell, a Kansas-born radio actress who's determined to crash New York's high society, comes along and precipitates a series of scandals that will torment Elsie for years to come. A beautiful and shameless driver, Anne sets her sights first on William Sr., who perhaps inevitably has abandoned any pretext of living the life of a sober-sided banker. High living among the high-stakes thoroughbred racing crowd is more to his taste, and he is rumored to have taken Anne on as a mistress and then passed her down to his son. Elsie presumably has the high tolerance for her husband's dalliances that the Gilded Age requires of wives, but her son is another matter. Dead set against a marriage, she goes so far as to hire a detective to follow Anne and is horrified to learn of Anne's trail of lovers. But on March 11th, 1943, Billy and Anne are married in a quiet wedding in Tacoma, Washington, where he's stationed in the Navy. A devastated Elsie does not attend the ceremony. The marriage is volatile, marked by frequent fights and numerous affairs. Without the Navy to bring order to his life, and despite his marriage, Billy assumes his former playboy habits. Elsie is desperate to interest him in something other than parties and chasing women. But again, she fails. Anne holds her own in the marital battles and holds on, planning trips and treats for Billy and giving birth to 2 sons. Despite their fraught alliance, the younger Woodwards remain fixtures in upper-class society. In 1955, Anne and Billy are still together, living in Oyster Bay, where there is talk of a prowler in their neighborhood. Before leaving for a nearby party at which the Duchess of Windsor is to be the honored guest, they make a search of the property around the house with flashlights, but find nothing out of order. At the party, Billy dances with the Duchess, and Anne watches closely as he taps other partners. Back home, they retire to their separate rooms. Then, around 2 a.m., there's the sound of gunshot, and Billy lies dead. Anne has shot him with the shotgun she keeps by her bed and claims to have mistaken her husband for the prowler. For a public with an insatiable appetite for every detail of the murder, this illustration offers visual clarification. Elsie allows Anne to order the flowers for the casket, but forbids her to attend the funeral. Anne chooses a blanket of white chrysanthemums and red carnations, the color scheme of Billy's racing stable. Some are quick to call it murder. Others hasten to protect the Woodward name. Elsie does both. By all accounts, she's convinced that it was murder committed by the daughter-in-law whom she has never accepted as a worthy match for a Woodward and whom she dislikes intensely. On the other hand, the Woodward name must be protected from scandal. In the end, Elsie backs Anne publicly in the hope that the press will then refrain from digging up dirt on Billy's philandering. When a grand jury is convened, it absolves Anne of murder without quieting doubts. Elsie's hand in the favorable outcome for Anne is rumored to have been heavy, costing her some $400,000. Anne is free, but her social friends take a cue from Elsie and shut her out. Charming Billy is dead, and Anne is banished from society. Elsie outlives her son by many years, soldiering on as a stalwart socialite, but her trials are seemingly endless. In 1975, when an excerpt of Truman Capote's book, Answered Prayers, appears in Esquire magazine, reviving the 20-year-old tale of Billy's tragic death and repeating society's judgment that his wife was the likely murderer, Anne is driven to suicide. She takes her own life with a capsule of cyanide. One more scandal for Elsie to face down, and not the last. Before long, both her grandsons, Anne's and Billy's sons, will jump out of windows to their deaths. Facing her own death at 99 in 1981, Elsie remains unbent, telling a friend, "I'm just going down like a ship. All my sails are up, but I'm just sinking." So with the end of the third triplet, that's the end of my tale. My next talk on Thursday, October 29th, will be on Helen Parrish Brown, adored daughter of the very, very merry and very rich James Parrish, and favorite niece of Southampton's childless benefactor, Samuel Parrish. I hope you'll join me then.
Thanks, Mary, for today's talk. If anybody has any questions, now would be the time where you can ask them. You'll see hopefully on the bottom of your toolbar, there should be a Q&A button and also a button called that says chat. You can submit your questions in either one of those. If you have any for Mary about any of the three sisters or any of their strange and tragic lives, and I will ask Mary them. Let's see. So before I go to the questions, I do just want to say it was always funny last year before COVID and we shut down all that. Whenever I had kids come to the museum for a tour, because I'd usually be the one bringing them through and giving them the tour of the house. And this exhibit was up for a little while. And normally I bring the kids through our whole main exhibit and tell them all about everything that's in there. And then this one, I usually skipped over a few of the different stories whenever I had younger school children, this being one of them. But let's see, questions. All right, so we have one from Kim. Where are the sisters buried?
I think they're buried. I don't know. I'm not sure. I think they're buried with their husbands, but they're not here. I don't think.
There's no Cryder tomb or anything like that.
No, you can go to Cryder Lane and remember them.
Okay.
Which leads to the beach.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
Let's see. Did the two other sisters support Elise during her trials?
Let me see. The trial was, I think at least one of them was dead. I don't know if they were supportive or not, but I think they probably went along with Elsie. Supported her because of the protecting the name, but suspicious.
Yeah. Also,
nobody liked her in the family.
Also, was the relationship with Wallace Simpson accepted or looked down upon society at the time?
Well, they were invited, and it didn't seem to affect anybody who, I mean, the Duchess was invited everywhere, and she was often with him.
Hmm. And then was the book The Two Mrs. Greenvilles by Donne based on the Woodwards?
Yes,
Yes. Okay.
yes, absolutely.
Um, let's see. Does anybody else have any other questions?
There
Yes.
was a book and a movie.
Oh, and a movie.
Yeah,
When was the movie made? A while ago, or
yeah, some time ago, but it's probably available somewhere.
maybe it could be a future screening that we do, or maybe it's
Yeah,
on YouTube. I can put it on our blog.
right.
I'll take a look. But if nobody else has any other questions, we could wrap it up for today. This was another great talk, Mary. Any of you watching now, if you want to share this with anybody, we'll have it on our YouTube within the next week or so you can pass it around, and hopefully you'll be able to join us next month for the next talk, which Mary, you already mentioned, right?
Yes, right.
Yeah.
It's on Helen Parish Brown.
Yep, and that's going to be on October 29th, same place, same time, and we'll see you all then. Thanks, everybody.